He's got some information that's very valuable. I want you to listen to what he has to say, and I want to congratulate you.
Thank you,
That was
sir.
great. Thanks, Ted.
Hey everybody, welcome to class today. We're going to have, this will be a shorter one today. We're going to talk about some cool stuff that I've been digging into, and I want to maybe introduce you to it. Maybe you guys already know, maybe some of you know more about this than I do, but we're going to deal in the world of sacred geometry. And I've had my head in those books a lot lately. So there's some fun classes that I'm putting together. This will be a small one, and it'll be part of several that all kind of weave together, kind of the style, the way that I normally do these. So I hope that you dig this today. I'm going to set this up under the video where you can leave some comments and even share this, so that if you dig it and want to share it with some of your friends, I would appreciate that and help me spread the word. So class today will begin, let's see, we're going to talk about the number phi. A lot of times people, they go, do you mean pi? And no, it's not pi, it's the number phi, which is also known as the golden mean or the golden ratio. It is the cool spiral that you see in nature. Technically, and we're going to get into this here, the spiral is not phi. The spiral is a different number sequence, which is called Fibonacci. So we're going to talk about Phi and Fibonacci today because of the way that they dance together. It has an important part in how we gain momentum. And so that's really what the purpose of our talk today is understanding the core, the basic unit of who we are. We are vibrational. We are energetic. We are physical, yeah, but it's secondary to something else. And so if we're going to use this thing in between our ears here to guide the expression of our life, if we're going to live with deliberate intention and create things on purpose, because you're always creating all the time, whether you realize it or not, then momentum has a lot to do with it. So really the point of this today, I'm going to show you some cool stuff about these number sequences and how they work. And there's some good images. There's a video, clip I'm going to show you. Excuse me. But the idea of this is so that you can understand the power of momentum. And in your life, when you are creating and you are, the life is unfolding in front of you and you're sort of steering the ship, it's very important for you to capitalize on momentum when you have it. See, momentum is like this circle. It's a cycle, and it just feeds into itself, and it continues to go and go and go, ever approaching what we'll call perfection. And that'll make some more sense here in just a second as we get into the video. So really what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to switch over to the screen, to this cool animated presentation for you to explain Phi and Fibonacci and how they are related to each other. And then we'll kind of come back at the end and talk about it and unpackage everything. Okay, so here we go.
First, I want to show you Phi and Fibonacci. It's important to understand for what we're going to talk about. I'll show you what you need to know to continue, and if you want to learn more in depth about these sequences, I will provide sources in the comments. Phi, also known as the golden ratio or golden mean, is a very simple relationship. If you had a rod and were going to put a mark on it, only two places would mark the phi ratio, which is here or here. The length of A plus B is equal to the length of C. This ratio is 1.6180339 and continues on forever. If you multiply the length of C with phi, it will create the exact same image, only bigger. C and D is equal to E. This ratio could then span on forever, going smaller and smaller or bigger and bigger forever. This ratio is infinite. It has no beginning and no end. It is also believed that phi is the mathematical root of all other sequences. See, every mathematical sequence in existence needs a minimum of 3 numbers to figure out the sequence. Phi only needs 2. It is the only one. Similar to how the circle and square are the source of all shape, but we'll get to that later on. The next thing that you need to know is that this ratio is found in all life everywhere. Sort of. By sort of, I mean it's really Fibonacci, but we'll look at that in a moment. Look at your hand. Not only does each finger have its own ratio moving up each finger, which is phi to the next bone, but it oscillates back and forth from the tallest finger to the thumb. You wonder why the human hand is like that? It's based on phi. This relationship is found throughout the body in various ways, moving up the arms and legs, in your face, throughout the entire body. This is a Greek statue that accurately represents this. The Greeks were very precise when they made their art, because they understood Phi, Fibonacci, and the importance of these sequences. When the Romans took over Greece, you could see the perfection in statues just completely disappear. I'm not saying the Romans were bad artists, they just didn't measure everything to the same caliber that the Greeks did. Here is the Phi ratio in butterflies. You can see this ratio everywhere, from the wing size to the body to the antennas. They're all Phi ratios. Here's dragonflies. It's the same story. Phi runs along the entire body, and the relation to the body and the wings. Here it is in frogs. Phi is found throughout the body, in relation to the head, to the arms, to the fingers, and so on. Well, what about fish? You'd think they wouldn't be found in fish. Well, here's 3 kinds of fish. Once again, the ratios are consistent. It doesn't just apply to these creatures though. Regardless of what mammal, insect, avian, plant, or living creature of any kind, you will find this ratio one way or another. There's a reason for this, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let me show you the importance we used to place on this golden ratio. In ancient times, we built many structures based on Phi because we understood divine proportion. This is the pagoda of Yakushiji Temple in Japan. It's built with these same mathematics, from the doorway to the ball on top of the temple. It is a structural embodiment of the proportions that all life holds. The Parthenon in Greece also has the exact same mathematical structure, but even more. I recommend watching Nova's Secrets of the Parthenon if you wish to learn more about this, because the stuff that they find is really cool. The Great Pyramid in Giza also has these proportions. They're incredibly precise, perfect in every way. You'd think that by building these structures using the logical and mathematical proportions so carefully, that they would hinder the creativity behind these buildings, but they really don't. In fact, the left brain understanding all of this can even enhance creativity if used correctly. It makes me wonder about all of the world-famous buildings of the modern world. Could Phi be a large factor in what makes them stand out? Let's move on to our next sequence, which is called Fibonacci. Now, the Fibonacci sequence is life's way of creating the golden mean. Allow me to explain. This sequence is continually made from adding the previous number to the current. 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 1 is 3, 3 and 2 is 5, 5 and 3 is 8. You can see how it continues. Now, what most people don't know about Fibonacci is that it actually continually strives closer and closer to the Phi ratio. By dividing the current number into the last, you can see this happening. 1 into 1 is 1. Well, that's not close at all. 2 into 1 is 2. This time it's over Phi, but closer. 3 into 2 is 1.5, which is under, but closer still. 5 into 3 is 1.666. This time it's over, but even closer. Continuing with that, it's 1.6, and then 1.625, 1.615384, 1.619048, and so on. It continually oscillates over and under the Phi ratio, never quite making it there, but continuing on closer and closer every time, until eventually you can't even tell the difference. Because Phi is an infinite number, this sequence will go on forever. Let's look at some spirals in nature, another way that Phi and Fibonacci can manifest. This is a nautilus shell. Many people will say it's Phi, but it's really Fibonacci. See how when it's in its earliest form, it's crude, not smooth or anything? One look and you can tell that's not Phi. But as it goes out farther and farther, it gets closer and closer to Phi. It becomes a nearly perfect Phi spiral by the time it's all the way out here. This also happens with sunflowers, pine cones, and many plants in nature. In many cases, such as the pine cones and sunflowers, it flows in a double spiral or more, much like the spiraling arms of a galaxy. From the microcosm to the macrocosm, spirals are always present. So Phi is basically source, or spirit, or God, in a mathematical way of thinking. The math of God. Don't forget that this sequence is an intimate part of nature itself. I'm going to call it source. It is the source of all mathematical sequences, and all life in existence grows based on Phi. However, Phi has no beginning and no end. Life doesn't know how to deal with that. It's like source says, go and replicate this, and life says, we don't know how. Because life doesn't know how to create from something that has no beginning. So it creates the Fibonacci sequence instead, which has a beginning, but starts out crude, very basic, and then continually goes closer and closer to source, becoming more divine every step. It does take steps too, which actually has quite a bit to do with evolution. Let's move on for now though. The only other sequence you need to know for this is binary sequences. This is a sequence like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. We're just doubling the last number instead of adding it to the previous one. We're all very familiar with this. Binary sequences are found in life as well. For example, mitotic cell divisions are binary. We go from being a single cell being to having over 100 trillion cells in only 46 divisions. Binary sequences are also how computers work, by turning on and off chips. Computing at its core anyways is binary. Okay, let's move on to something different for now, but what we just looked at will reveal itself in time. This is how a polar graph usually looks, with 36 radial lines in 10-degree increments representing the 360 degrees. Then, concentric circles are drawn, each with the same distance away as the last, creating 8 equal demarcations as the one before, counting the inside circle as 1. Think about what this represents too. It's a two-dimensional drawing of a three-dimensional sphere, one of the sacred forms, by projecting it onto a flat surface. This is also called a shadow form, and casting shadows is a sacred way to obtain information. Also, a polar graph has both straight, male lines and circular, female lines, both male and female energies interacting at once. If you plot a golden mean spiral at 0 degrees on the polar graph, it will loop all the way around before hitting 0 again, exactly at the 8th circle. You'll find that this golden mean line crosses 5 specific places as it goes out. These places are where the female circular lines meet the male lines. It crosses at 120 degrees, 190 degrees, 240 degrees, 280 degrees, and then it jumps to 360, or back at 0, depending on how you look at it. What's interesting about this is that it creates both a binary and Fibonacci sequence. Looking at the radial increments from the center, it crosses at 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8. Well, that's Fibonacci, but it also crosses at 2, 4, and 8. Well, that's a binary sequence. We're going to look at the binary sequence in particular though, because what you find is very cool. If you draw lines from the outermost circles on the lines where the binary sequence was formed, you get this image. It is an equilateral triangle. If you continue the spiral outward, it would continue to hit these exact same places and continue to form larger equilateral triangles. Let's divert yet again to look at something very interesting. There was a man named Keith Critchlow who discovered something very important to understanding the geometry of music. First, he drew a straight line through an equilateral triangle, and then he measured from the middle of the center line and drew a straight line up to the top edge and back down to the bottom corner. Then he did the same, but passed through the center line of the top and back down again. He did this yet again on the other side. You can keep doing this on either side as well. By drawing this funny little form, he discovered something of great importance. He writes, continuing in this way, each successive proportion will be the harmonic mean between the previous proportion and the total length, and all of these proportions will be musically significant. 1/2 being the octave, 2/3 being the fifth, 4/5 being the major third, 8/9 being the major tone or step, and 16/17 being the half tone or step. In other words, he discovered the geometries of music, or at least one aspect of them. Then he tried measuring it in a different way, starting at a different point of the center line. At 3/4, he found the measurements were 1/7, 1/4, 2/5, 4/7, 8/11, and 16/19. All of these numbers are musically significant. This is very interesting. It means that the harmonics of music are somehow related to the proportions of the central line moving through a tetrahedron. Back to the polar graph, you can see that this drawing has a much greater value all of a sudden. Not only that, but it becomes even easier to make your measurements thanks to the polar graph itself. You can just draw a straight line through the drawing on the graph, and it will give you the center line. This information has been taken light years beyond what I just showed you though. A research team found that you can draw these lines not only from the center, but from any nodal points inside the upper half of the triangle, and you'll come up with all known harmonics in existence. Basically, this means that anywhere the straight line and curved lines on the polar graph cross from 0 to 120 degrees and start making the pattern, you will come up with all known harmonic systems. Not only the Western keyboard, but the Eastern, and even many unknown systems that have never been used. As I'm not a musician, there's not much more I can show you related to this, but I would love to see what a musician could really do with this knowledge. How far could you take this? Alright, I'm running low on time here, so I'll wrap up with this unraveling. Remember when we talked about spirals in nature? They often travel in twos. Usually this is male and female. So on this polar graph, if you're going to copy nature, you don't just plot one spiral, you have to plot two. When you do that, it gives you this image, which is a star tetrahedron inside of a sphere. We mentioned this in lesson 7, and this image is more commonly known as the Star of David. Do you remember the face on Mars? NASA obviously tells us that it's just a random formation on the surface of the planet. But right next to the face, there are also a few pyramids and other anthropomorphic structures. I know what you're thinking. Why on earth would I bring that up all of a sudden? Well, Richard Hoagland and his colleagues have spent a long time researching and deciphering a message on the surface of the red planet. Want to know what that message was? It was a star tetrahedron inscribed in a sphere. Holy balls, right? There's a link in the comments to a page with all of this information if you want to learn more. It's pretty crazy, and very eye-opening now that we have this information about what this really means. Inside the star tetrahedron, another one fits perfectly. We can continue to put more and more star tetrahedrons inside or outside of the other star tetrahedrons, the same way the golden mean spiral can wrap around the polar graph infinitely big or infinitely small. You'll notice that this smaller tetrahedron also happens to fit perfectly around this sphere. Well, check this out. If you put this same size sphere centered on the point of every single star tetrahedral point, guess what suddenly reveals itself? Fruit of life. It's back. According to the Egyptians, as well as the Ascended Masters, this is one of the holiest, most sacred forms in existence. Of course, we already learned one of its informational systems in Lesson 6, and what you just saw was the second, only in reverse order. What this means is that all of the information of music, harmonics, sound, and spirals come out of this image. Not only that, but light and the dimensional levels work in the same way as harmonics, which we've already discussed in Lesson 2, 7, and 9. Meaning that the geometric information about light and dimensions are also related to this star tetrahedron pattern. So just briefly looking at this image that we looked at in Lesson 7, this is the fourth unraveling of the flower of life. It is an infinite spectrum of never-ending fruits of life within more fruits of life. This is the unraveling of dimensions, so it makes a little more sense now, but I won't have time to show you anything more today. So what you just saw was the second unraveling from the third rotational pattern of Genesis, the geometry at the heart of creation.
Okay, how cool is that? I really like those videos. It's something I just found on YouTube. I left the credits there at the end if you want to try and find that dude. Some great videos from him. But let's kind of just recap and then let's unpackage this, because what I want you to understand here, and I'll just highlight the parts that are important to our conversation. In dealing with Phi and dealing with Fibonacci, there was some other stuff at the end of that video that doesn't really apply to this conversation, but it was just cool, so I left it in there, and I'm sure that you probably geeked out on it. It was really awesome. But I want you to think of Phi as God. Okay, Phi is source, spirit, the universe. Phi has no beginning, and Phi has no end. It is infinite, and it goes infinitely. It gets larger, and infinitely it gets smaller in both directions. So it doesn't have a place where it starts and then goes from there. It just never started. This was evidence in the idea that we only need two numbers to do this ratio, and we see in the geometry of nature and in our life and in our body and in animals and in plants, and there's like a pulse or a template. There's an underlying tone or vibration that we all in here on Earth at least are trying to achieve coherence with. We're trying to get into alignment with that. Okay, so Phi is, in this example, it's source. And the Fibonacci is more of a man-made, crude type of way. So this we'll call it man. We'll call it nature. How about that? So you have source, and then you have like the physical expression of things here in nature. Fibonacci does have a beginning. It isn't infinite in all the, it's infinitely smaller and infinitely bigger. It just gets bigger. It starts at 1 and then it moves up using the sequence where you add the number to the last one, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So Phi, infinite in both directions, has no beginning or end. Fibonacci is not the case, and it does have a definite beginning. So in this picture right here, this is the plant coming up out of the ground, and this is a great example of the point or the takeaway here. This plant doesn't know how to, let me choose different words. This plant, as it begins, it doesn't know how to just do the golden ratio, because the golden ratio never begins or never ends. It's almost like it's the blueprint that we're trying to follow. And it's like when you put a puzzle together and you're looking at the box and you're trying to do it, okay? It's like Phi is the picture there that we're trying to achieve. And then Fibonacci is us down here on the desk with all the puzzle pieces trying to put the puzzle together. So when we start with the puzzle, it's kind of crude. I'll usually do the border pieces, and then I'll find some areas that have a certain color, and I'll do the easier things first, and then it all sort of comes together at the end, and it's perfect. Well, this is the way that this plant grows. It starts off very crude because it uses Fibonacci. Fibonacci has a beginning. So it uses this sequence to begin growing, I guess, because we're going to apply this to consciousness here in a minute. It's not necessarily just about a physical thing growing. This is about the evolution of us and our awareness as well. But this flower picture is so perfect. You see that at the beginning, it's crude, it's Fibonacci. The numbers aren't near phi at all. But the more and more and more that it ascends and gets higher, the closer it becomes into alignment and in coherence with that presence or that blueprint called phi, that puzzle box that we're trying to, get to, that perfection that is inside of each and every one of you, that perfection that we are built in the image of. It's all right there. Fibonacci is the way in our physical world that we try to get in tuned with that God presence that's everywhere. That's really what it's about. So here's the rub, okay? And here's why the momentum is important. So let's go back to this picture here. You see on the left side, as Fibonacci begins, first it's way off, okay? It's way off from the center line. Then in the next set of numbers, it jumps down on the other side of the line, and you can see it keeps going back and forth. So as it moves along across the screen here, it creates a wave pattern. It's a vibrational wave. It's an energetic signature right there. And what it's doing is it's getting, with each one of those additions, each step it moves away from its beginning, it's going to get closer and closer to that perfect vibrational alignment that it's striving to achieve. So at the beginning, it's crude, it's ugly, it's, lumpy and awkward and gawky, and then it moves toward the perfection. So let's apply this to anything at all. If we have an exciting idea about something and it's a seed that we plant, a seed of desire, and we put it in the vortex and we get into a place of feeling good and we like it, well, that right there is us doing that Fibonacci sequence. It's me giving birth to an idea, okay, and it begins right then. So my Fibonacci, I'm using my mind almost to create this Fibonacci sequence with thoughts, okay? So just go with me on this journey here. I'm thinking about this cool thing that I want to attract or manifest. I'm thinking about just something that I like or want in my life, and I'm getting into alignment with it. And I'm getting into a space, I'm getting into my vortex so that I can reinforce the emotions and the sort of station that I'm tuned into. So, how law of attraction works. I don't have to explain all that to you. But here's what is so profound about what these numbers of Phi and Fibonacci are teaching us. They're showing us right there, plain as day, that when we begin something, it's tough, it's crude, it's way off of center, it is not coherent, it's not in alignment. But the more that we work at it, and the more we work toward it, and the more that we feed that, if it's a desire, a seed that we planted, then we go and water the seed, right? We do that with reinforcing positive feelings and words and, your attitude and your choice of, what you're going to surround yourself with, that you build momentum. Okay, this is the point that I'm trying to make. When you have momentum with something, it gets easier and easier and easier and easier. Just like if you were going to roll a big boulder, I don't know why you would do that, but if you were, at first, it's really hard to get going. But then as it gets some momentum, you kind of just have to reach over and push it a few times. Every now and then you just give it another little push. Because the power that is that's like trapped in there in this centrifugal type of spin, it like takes the power and throws it right back into itself, almost like a Tai Chi principle. So the same thing is true with your thoughts. And that's what this Fibonacci sequence is showing us, is that the energy created, it's almost like it feeds right back into itself to give it a more refined look and to get closer and closer to Phi, to get closer to Source, to get in more close alignment and harmony with that presence of God or source or universe or whatever word you want to put on it, that we're always striving to do that. Now, here comes the problem. When we have momentum, everything is great, and it becomes easier and easier, and it becomes more in alignment with our, intention, and we're in alignment with a source, and everything's working, and we're buzzing, we feel awesome, and we're in the vortex, and everything is so awesome, all right? Well, the problem is when you stop. And we do this all the time. A lot of times there are people around us that force us to stop. Maybe let me put an example to this. I might be thinking about my cool desire. I'm something that I want to have true. Let me think of something. I want to learn to play a certain song on the piano. All right, I'm going to learn that piano and learn that song. It's going to be great. So I'm thinking about it. So I've started. I begin through my thought process. I'm spinning this this thought in these waves of desire focused on me learning to play the song on piano. And I feel good about it. And I get a tutorial. I find a study book. I find a video that's going to show me how to do it. And I practice a little bit. And you see, I'm feeling better and I'm more excited and I'm in the groove and I'm listening to the song and I got a little part of it picked out and I have momentum. It's getting easier and easier. I am in a greater proximity to source at that moment. I am in vibrational alignment with that. And then along comes somebody, and without maybe even knowing better, they kind of trash talk your venture. You might be going, look, I'm so excited, watch, I can play this. And you sit down to play, and it's like, a 4-year-old is playing the piano. And you're like, look, I did it. See, they hit that note. And they're like, I hate to tell you this. I know you're excited, but that really sucks. I'm not so sure that it sounds as good as you think it does. And to be kind of, face reality here, I'm not so sure you're like a concert pianist. It's probably never going to sound that good as it does on the recording. All right, so maybe somebody not even trying to be mean or anything. A lot of times our family will do this with the best intentions to try and steer us in a certain direction or something.
First, I want to show you Phi and Fibonacci. It's important to understand.
Oh, hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. I was just trying to build this case that sometimes the reason that we stop and lose our momentum is because of other people and their influence on us. That's really, that was all I really wanted to say about that. Sometimes you do it yourself. Sometimes it's your doubt and your negative sort of talk in your head or your worry, all the kind of head games that we like to play on ourselves. So sometimes that's what the problem is. But regardless of whatever the reason is that we stop, stopping is the culprit. And it may seem naive or innocent enough that you stop pursuing your dream or really, I'm trying to choose my words appropriately here. It's not that you just all of a sudden stop dreaming about your goal. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that once you start an idea, a thought, an intention, and you get some momentum going behind it, it's all about this period of time where it just kind of takes off and goes on its own. That's when we get into that the alignment with Phi. That's when we, as a physical being, create in a way that gets us into alignment with that source energy, with that God presence, and move us into those levels of awareness and consciousness. So the point really of all of this, kind of like, what do we take away from this? I wanted to show you physically using math the idea of there being a presence and a perfection in the universe, a God, and that in our physical expression, in our physical world, we don't start off that way at all, and we move and strive to become as close as we can to that. So make sure that whatever you're digging on these days, you might be into learning to play the piano or I don't know why I keep saying that one. You might be, learning something, a new language, or you might be focused on a new career or relationship, or you're doing a fitness thing or a diet or whatever it is. Be aware of this idea of momentum, because the more times that you have an idea and you a cool, happy, positive goal and intention, and you think about it a little bit, and then you think about how it's not going to work, and somebody tells you, no, it's not going to work, and you're like, yeah, I'm dumb. Why did I ever think that would work? You stop. Well, you can always pick it back up again, but you can always get in the way and stop it again. And I'm afraid that this is how most of us live our lives. Without awareness of this, what we tend to do is to just stop, start all the time. So we never get the momentum. We never get further along that Fibonacci progression to reap the benefits of being in alignment with Source. Do you get where I'm going with this? These number sequences, I mean, it's not like you have to memorize them or carry it around in your back pocket or something. It's there to have it's almost like a metaphor. It's a visual aid for you. It's a tool for you to be able to see what it is momentum is. For you to be able to see what happens when your momentum is broken. When you stop, you have to begin all over. And you have to do all that hard work. And you have those clunky, awkward, kind of lanky movements back and forth in that wave until it gets into a proximity with Phi. So make sure that you are, I want to say guarded, but that has sort of like a defensive tone to it. But it's really about you having a lot of respect for yourself and your thoughts. It's about your dreams and your intentions, keeping them guarded, keeping them close, not just running around and telling everyone, because most people, God bless them, they will throw a bunch of counter intention at you and sabotage you. They will try to get you to stop for whatever their reasons are. I'm not going to get into that today. But I bring this to the table in our class today because of the importance in being aware of momentum. And even more important, being aware of what the stops are. What are your stops? I want you to think about it. Maybe even write something in the comments about what you think your distractions are, the things that make you stop, the things that get you off point. Because I know if you've got one, then somebody else has got a different one, and you guys might be able to help and learn from each other. So please do that. Leave some comments below the video here. Let me know what you thought about today's class. And go ahead and share the video too if you dig it. And let your friends watch along too. So that was all for the class today. It wasn't anything too crazy, but it's a very powerful point. I wanted to keep it simple just around this one point. It's about momentum. It's about you being aware that you have it. It's about you being aware of your only goal in life is to feel good right now. Is to be in alignment with that source energy. It's to be one with Phi, right? It's to just feel good and to stay in that place and get the momentum going and ride the wave. Because when you are in that state, you have all of creation behind you in support of everything that you do. You're unstoppable. You're awesome. You are a champion. You are. You seriously are. I know I'm being goofy, but you can do anything you want to do. You just have to believe it, and you have to build the momentum. All right, guys. I'll see you later.